Welcome to Love DoOver, where every story is a journey through heartbreak, healing, and rediscovery. In this story, she became a doctor at 23, then realized she never lived at all. We dive deep into the raw, human emotions that make love both beautiful and devastating. Before we begin, remember this. If you've ever loved and lost, or thought you'll never find love again, this story is for you. Subscribe and turn on notifications to never miss a new tale of heartbreak and rebirth. Angelina learned very early that being loved and being impressive were not the same thing. She just didn't have the words for it yet. It usually started in the evenings, right around dinner, when her mother's voice would rise just enough to carry through the house. Angelina got another perfect score. There would be a pause, like the sentence needed space to shine. Her father would respond from wherever he was, usually the living room. Of course she did. Angelina would sit at the table, staring at her plate, not sure if she was supposed to smile or keep eating like nothing happened. Smiling felt like showing off. Not smiling felt ungrateful. So she settled for chewing slowly, and hoping the moment passed quickly. Across from her, Asher snorted. "You ever think of getting one wrong, just to keep things interesting?" "I didn't mean to get them all right," Angelina said, and immediately knew that sounded strange. Rose burst out laughing. "That's even worse. You sound like a villain in a movie." "I'm not a villain." "You kind of are," Asher added, pointing his fork at her. "You correct teachers." "They make mistakes," Angelina replied, frowning slightly. "Yesterday, Mr. Collins said the heart has 2 chambers. Rose leaned forward. "And you said?" "That it has 4. "And how did that go?" "He said thank you." Asher shook his head slowly. "Yeah, no. That's not how normal people behave." Angelina opened her mouth, then closed it. She didn't actually know how normal people behaved. She only knew what was correct. Their mother waved a hand lightly. "Let her be. She's different." Different. It was said like something to be proud of, so Angelina nodded and accepted it, even though she didn't fully understand what it meant. The next morning, while her mother fixed her collar before school, she said, "You have your test today, right?" "Yes." "You'll get full marks." Angelina hesitated. "I'll try." Her mother paused, fingers still on the fabric. "You don't try. You just do." Angelina nodded, but something about that sentence sat wrong in her chest. You don't try. You just do. It sounded less like confidence and more like a rule. 2 weeks later, her teacher called her after class. "Angelina, we've been reviewing your performance," she said, folding her hands together. "You're ready for more advanced material." Angelina stood still. "I like this class." "I know," the teacher said kindly, "but you'll grow more in the next level." Angelina looked at the empty desks around her, the place where Rose used to wait for her after school, the corner where she had finally figured out how to join conversations without interrupting. "Okay," she said, because that was what she always said. That evening, her mother was already on the phone before Angelina even took off her shoes. "She's skipping another grade," she said, pacing. "Yes, again." Angelina stood by the door, holding her backpack, feeling like she had walked into someone else's celebration. Asher leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You okay?" "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." "I said I'm fine." He watched her for a second longer, then shrugged. "All right. Just don't forget us when you become a world-famous genius." "I won't." But even as she said it, she wasn't sure how that would work. The following week, her new classroom felt louder, faster, harder to follow. The students talked like they had known each other for years. Their jokes overlapped, their laughter came easily, and their words didn't always mean exactly what they said. Angelina listened carefully, trying to map it out like a system. At lunch, she sat at the edge of a table, unwrapping her sandwich with quiet precision. A girl across from her was talking about a boy. "He said he'd die for me," the girl laughed. "Can you believe that?" Everyone else laughed too. Angelina smiled, a little late, then said, "That's not medically realistic." The table went silent. The girl blinked. "What?" "Well," Angelina continued, trying to help, "people often overestimate." "Oh my God," someone muttered. "You're serious." Angelina stopped talking. Heat crept up her neck. She looked down at her sandwich, suddenly very interested in how neatly it was cut. "I was joking," she said, even though she hadn't been. "Right," the girl said slowly. "Maybe don't." Angelina nodded. The next morning, she chose a seat farther away. At home, nothing had changed. "Top of the class again," her father said, holding up her test paper. "Yes." "That's my girl." Her mother hugged her tightly. "You make everything look so easy." Angelina hesitated, then asked quietly, "What if it's not?" Her mother pulled back, confused. "What do you mean?" "What if it's not easy?" Her father laughed lightly. "Then you make it look easy. That's even better." Angelina smiled because that seemed to fix the moment. But inside, something twisted. Because it wasn't easy, it was constant. A few months later, she stopped trying to talk during lunch altogether. It wasn't that she didn't want to. It was that every time she did, something went slightly wrong, like she was always half a second behind the rhythm of everyone else. So she observed. She learned when to nod, when to smile, when to stay quiet. It worked. People stopped calling her weird. They just stopped calling her anything at all. One night, while brushing her teeth, she caught her reflection and paused. She tilted her head slightly. What do normal people think about? She genuinely didn't know. Her thoughts were always scheduled. What to study next, what to improve, what to fix. There was no space for anything else. A year later, she skipped another grade. This time, no one even asked her how she felt. It was expected now. At dinner, her mother raised her glass. To Angelina, always ahead. Asher clinked his glass half-heartedly. Ahead of what, though? Of everyone, their father said. Rose grinned, including us. Angelina looked at them, then back at her plate. She wanted to say something real, like "I miss sitting with you," like "I don't know where I belong anymore." But the words stayed in her throat. Instead, she said, "Thank you." A few years later, in her mid-teens, everything blurred into routine. Wake up, study, achieve, repeat. She became efficient at it, efficient at everything. At family gatherings, people would say, "This is the smart one, not Angelina, the smart one." She would smile politely. Inside, she wondered if that was all she was. One evening, Asher found her sitting on the floor of her room, books spread around her. "You ever get tired," he asked, "of studying?" "No, of being this version of yourself all the time." Angelina looked up at him. "I don't know any other version," she said honestly. Asher nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's what worries me." 2 years later, the letter came. Her mother saw the envelope and gasped. "This is it!" Her father stood up immediately. "Open it!" Angelina slid her finger under the seal carefully, unfolding the paper inside. She read it once, then again. "You're in," her mother said before she even spoke. "I knew it." Her father hugged her tightly. "Yale, do you understand what this means?" Asher clapped her shoulder. "You're officially untouchable now." Rose hugged her. "You're leaving us." The room filled with excitement, voices overlapping, phones ringing. Angelina stood in the middle of it, holding the letter. The next morning, her mother was already planning everything. "This is the start of your future," she said. Angelina nodded. "Start of your future." Later that evening, when the house finally went quiet, Angelina sat alone at the dining table. The same seat. She placed the letter in front of her and stared at it. This was supposed to feel like something. Big, important, life-changing. She waited. Nothing came. Not happiness, not fear, not even relief. Just a quiet, empty space where something should have been. She leaned back in her chair, exhaling slowly. Is this it? The question didn't feel heavy. It felt simple. Like she had followed every instruction perfectly and ended up somewhere she didn't recognize. Angelina folded the letter carefully and placed it on the table. Then she sat there a little longer, staring at it, trying to feel something, anything. But the silence inside her stayed exactly the same. The first night at Yale, Angelina sat on her bed and tried to figure out where to put her hands. That felt like a strange problem to have, but there she was, sitting in a neatly made dorm room, hands resting on her lap, like she was waiting for instructions. Her roommate, Tessa, was on the other side of the room, unpacking loudly and happily. "Oh my God, I'm so excited," Tessa said, pulling out a pile of clothes. "This is going to be the best time of our lives." Angelina nodded. "Statistically, that's unlikely." Tessa paused mid-motion and looked at her. "Are you serious right now?" Angelina hesitated. "I was attempting humor." Tessa stared for a second, then laughed. "Okay. You're funny, in a very stressful way." Angelina smiled politely, even though she wasn't sure if that was a compliment. That night, as Tessa talked about parties and people she had already met, Angelina lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening, trying to understand how someone could sound so free. What does that feel like? She didn't ask. The next morning, classes began. By the end of the week, Angelina had already mapped out her entire semester, including extra readings, research opportunities, and a study schedule that left almost no empty space. It felt safe that way. Predictable. Controlled. 2 weeks later, Tessa knocked on her desk while Angelina was reading. "You're coming out tonight," Tessa said. "I have a lab report." "You always have something. Come on, just one night." Angelina hesitated. Her mind immediately started calculating lost time, unfinished tasks, the discomfort of unfamiliar environments. "I don't think I would enjoy it." "That's not the point," Tessa said, grabbing her wrist. "The point is to try." Angelina paused. Try. The word felt unfamiliar. "Okay," she said slowly. Later that evening, the music was too loud. Angelina stood near the wall, holding a cup she hadn't touched, watching people talk, laugh, move easily in ways that felt completely foreign. Tessa was already gone, absorbed into a group of people. A guy approached Angelina with a smile. "Hey, you look like you're analyzing the room." "I am," she said honestly. He laughed. "That's kind of intense." There was a pause. "So, what do you study?" he asked. "Pre-med." "Of course you do," he said, grinning. "You have that look." "What look?" "Like you know things I don't." Angelina considered that. "That's possible." He leaned closer. "Like what?" She thought for a second. "Right now your heart rate is slightly elevated." He blinked. "What?" "Your pupils are also dilated," she added, observing. "It could be the lighting, but combined with your posture." "Okay," he said, laughing, stepping back. "I feel like I'm being examined." "I'm sorry," Angelina said quickly. "I didn't mean to." "No, it's fine. You're interesting." "Interesting." He walked away a moment later. Angelina stood there, staring into her untouched drink. That didn't go well. Inside her head, she replayed it, trying to understand what part had shifted the tone. Maybe I shouldn't say what I notice. But then, what do I say? The question stayed with her the rest of the night. 3 months later, the parties stopped being invitations and became stories she heard secondhand. Angelina returned to what she understood best: work. The following week, she began volunteering at a hospital near campus. The first time she stepped into the emergency department, something clicked. Not joy, not excitement, but clarity. Here, people spoke directly. Problems had structure, solutions had logic. A nurse handed her a chart. "You're the student, right? Follow me." Angelina nodded, and for once in her life didn't feel out of place. 3 years later, she was ahead again. Of course she was. She moved through her program faster than most, taking on extra shifts, extra research, extra everything. Sleep became optional. Food became scheduled. Conversations became brief and functional. One afternoon, Tessa sat across from her in the library, watching her highlight the same paragraph 3 times. "Do you ever stop?" Tessa asked. "I'm almost done with this section." "That's not what I meant." Angelina looked up. "Then what did you mean?" "I mean, do you ever just exist without doing something productive?" Angelina frowned slightly. "That doesn't sound efficient." Tessa sighed. "You're going to burn out." "I'm fine." "You always say that." "Because it's true." But even as she said it, her chest felt tight, not painfully, just restricted, like she couldn't take a full breath. It passed after a few seconds. Angelina went back to reading. The next morning, it happened again, this time in the middle of a lecture. Her professor's voice faded slightly as her heart began to race for no clear reason. Her hands felt cold. Her breathing turned shallow. What is this? She sat up straighter, trying to focus. You're fine. You're fine. She repeated it in her head like a fact she could force into reality. A few minutes later, it passed. Angelina looked around. No one had noticed. Good. The following year, she graduated early. Her parents flew in, proud and loud as ever. You did it, her mother said, holding her face. You always do. Her father smiled. This is just the beginning. Angelina nodded, wearing her cap and gown, feeling the weight of their expectations settle comfortably on her shoulders. Comfortable because it was familiar. Even if it was heavy. At 23, she stood inside a hospital in Los Angeles, wearing a white coat with her name on it, Dr. Angelina Carter. She stared at the badge for a second longer than necessary. A senior doctor walked past. First day? Yes. You'll get used to it, he said. Or you won't. Either way, the work keeps going. Angelina nodded. The work keeps going. That part, she understood. The next few months blurred into long shifts, late nights, and endless cases. Patients came in with pain, fear, urgency. Angelina handled it all with precision. She was good. Very good. People noticed. You're impressive, one nurse told her. Thank you. You don't seem to get tired. I manage my time. The nurse smiled faintly. That's not the same thing. Angelina didn't respond, because she wasn't sure what the difference was. 3 years later, at 26, she completed her PhD. Another celebration. Another moment that was supposed to mean something. Her parents hosted a dinner, inviting friends, speaking proudly about her achievements. She's a doctor and a PhD holder, her mother said, at 26. Her father raised his glass. To Angelina, always ahead. Always ahead. The words landed differently now. Ahead of what? Ahead of who? Angelina smiled through the evening, answering questions, accepting praise, playing her role perfectly. Inside, something felt quiet. Too quiet. Later that night, back at the hospital, she walked down a long hallway under harsh fluorescent lights. The building was quieter now, the kind of quiet that made every footstep echo. She passed by a glass panel and caught her reflection. She stopped. For a moment, she just stared. White coat, tired eyes, composed expression. She looked exactly like someone who had everything together. She tilted her head slightly. Do I? The question didn't come with panic, just curiosity. She stepped closer to the glass. Her reflection didn't change. Did I want this? She searched her own face for an answer. Nothing came, no excitement, no regret, no clear sense of anything. Just that same quiet emptiness she had felt years ago at the dining table, only now it felt heavier, because this was supposed to be the destination. Angelina stood there a little longer, looking at herself like she was trying to recognize a stranger, and the thought settled in clearly, without distraction. I don't know who this is. The next morning started exactly the same. Angelina woke up before her alarm, stared at the ceiling and thought, okay, let's do this again. She didn't feel tired. She didn't feel rested either. She just got up. By the time she walked into the hospital, everything was already moving. Nurses calling out names, monitors beeping. Someone laughing too loudly at something that probably wasn't that funny. Morning, doctor, a nurse said as she passed. Morning, for you look awake. I am awake. The nurse gave her a look like she wanted to say more, then walked off. Angelina checked her list. Full, of course. She picked up her first chart and walked into the room. Good morning, I'm Dr. Carter. The woman sitting on the bed looked up, her eyes warm but tired. Mrs. Thomas. Angelina nodded. What brings you in today? Chest pain, Mrs. Thomas said. My son insisted I come. Angelina moved closer, already slipping into routine. When did it start? Last night. On a scale of 1 to 10? Maybe a 6. Angelina wrote it down, her voice steady, her mind already moving ahead. Symptoms, causes, next steps. Mrs. Thomas watched her for a moment, then said, You move very fast. I've been trained to be efficient. Efficient, she repeated, like she was testing the word. That sounds tiring. It's necessary. Mrs. Thomas tilted her head slightly. Is it? Angelina paused for half a second, then continued writing. In this environment, yes. There was a quiet moment. Then Mrs. Thomas asked, Do you like it? Angelina looked up. I'm sorry? Your job, she said simply. Do you like what you do? The question landed somewhere it wasn't supposed to. Angelina opened her mouth. This is easy. Say yes. That's the correct answer. But the word didn't come out. Instead, there was silence. Mrs. Thomas watched her, not pushing, just waiting. Angelina felt something strange happen in her chest. Not pain, not panic, just space. I don't know, she said before she could stop herself. The words hung there. Mrs. Thomas nodded slowly. That's an honest answer. Angelina blinked. Did I just say that? I mean, I do my job well, she added quickly, trying to correct it. I help people. That's not what I asked. Angelina's grip on her pen tightened slightly. What do I say? What is the right answer? Mrs. Thomas leaned back a little. I used to be a teacher, she said. I was very good at it. Angelina nodded, not sure where this was going. I showed up every day, did everything right. My students did well. My supervisors were happy. That sounds like a good career. It was, she said. On paper. Angelina felt that word again. Paper. I kept telling myself I'd enjoy life later, Mrs. Thomas continued. After work slowed down, after everything settled. Angelina swallowed. But it didn't, she said quietly. Mrs. Thomas smiled, but there was something heavy behind it. It never does. The room felt different now. Too quiet. Angelina looked down at her notes, but the words didn't make sense anymore. Do you like it? The question replayed in her head. Do you? She tried to answer. I worked for this, I earned this, this is what I'm supposed to do. But none of those were answers, they were explanations. Mrs. Thomas watched her for another moment, then said gently, You're very young. I'm 26. That's young, she said. Young enough to choose differently. Angelina let out a small breath. I don't even know what that means, she admitted. Mrs. Thomas nodded. That's usually where it starts. 5 minutes later, Angelina stepped out of the room. The hallway looked the same. Everything was the same. But it didn't feel the same. A nurse called out, Room 8 is ready for you. Angelina didn't move. Doctor? I heard you. She stood there, staring at nothing. Do you like it? I don't know. She said it out loud this time, barely above a whisper. The nurse frowned. Are you okay? Angelina turned to her slowly. No, she said. And for the first time it felt like the truth didn't need to be adjusted. 10 minutes later, she was in her supervisor's office. He looked up, confused. Everything all right? Angelina didn't sit down. I can't do this anymore. He blinked. I'm sorry? I can't do this anymore, she repeated, her voice steady, but something underneath it was shaking. I quit. Angelina, you're in the middle of your shift. I know. Then what are you saying? I'm saying I'm done. He leaned forward. If this is about stress, take a few days, that's normal. This isn't stress. Then what is it? Angelina opened her mouth. Nothing clean came out, just the truth. I don't feel anything, she said. And I think that's worse. He stared at her. You've worked your whole life for this. I know. And you're just walking away? Angelina nodded. Yes. Later that afternoon, she sat in her car, hands resting on the steering wheel. Her phone was in her lap. She stared at it for a long moment. Then she called. Her mother answered quickly. "Angelina, is everything okay?" Angelina let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "I quit." Silence. "What do you mean you quit?" Her father's voice came in immediately. "I mean I quit my job." "In the middle of your career?" her mother asked, her voice rising. "In the middle of my shift." Another silence. "Why would you do that?" her father asked. Angelina closed her eyes. "Say it clearly." "I can't take it anymore," she said. "I don't feel anything. I don't know who I am outside of this. I need to find myself." Her mother's voice softened, but not in the way she hoped. "You're just tired." "No," Angelina said quietly. "I'm not just tired. You're overwhelmed. This is a phase." "It's not a phase. You're throwing everything away," her father said. Angelina felt something settle inside her. Not anger, not fear, just certainty. "Maybe," she said, "but it doesn't feel like I ever had it." Silence again, this time heavier. "We don't understand this," her mother said. "I know." The call ended without resolution. Angelina stared at her phone for a few seconds. Then she turned it off. The quiet that followed felt different. Not empty, just hers. That evening she packed. Not carefully, not perfectly, just enough. Clothes, shoes, a few personal things. She paused once, looking around her apartment. This was her life. Or at least, it was supposed to be. She picked up her keys. Later that night, she got into her car and started driving. No destination, no plan. The streets of Los Angeles stretched out in front of her, familiar but distant. Her heart was beating fast. Her hands tightened on the wheel. "This is a bad idea." The thought came quickly, followed by another. "Then why does it feel right?" Angelina exhaled slowly, eyes fixed on the road. For the first time in her life, she wasn't following a plan. She was just moving. And even though it scared her, there was something else there too, something small, but real. She kept driving. That night, Angelina drove until the city lights of Los Angeles became smaller in her rearview mirror. At first, she kept checking it. Every few minutes, her eyes flicked up to the mirror like something might follow her. Nothing did. The roads grew quieter. The buildings thinned out. The noise she was used to faded into a kind of silence that felt too open. She tightened her grip on the steering wheel. What am I doing? The question came back again, louder this time. She didn't answer it. Because for once she didn't have an answer that made sense. An hour later she pulled into a gas station. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the place looked exactly like every other gas station she had ever seen, except this time she wasn't rushing. She turned off the engine and just sat there for a moment. Okay, now what? Usually there was always a next step. Now there wasn't. She stepped out of the car slowly, like she was learning how to exist outside a schedule. Inside the small store, a man behind the counter looked up. "You passing through?" he asked. Angelina paused. "I think so." He nodded like that was a normal answer. "Coffee's fresh." She walked over to the machine and stared at it longer than necessary. There were too many buttons, too many options. Regular, dark roast, hazelnut, something labeled French Vanilla Delight, which felt unnecessarily optimistic. What do normal people pick? She pressed a button at random. The coffee poured. She added sugar, then stopped, then added more sugar, then stared at it. This feels like a test. At the counter, the man rang her up. "Long drive?" "Yes." "Where to?" Angelina hesitated. "I'm not sure yet." He raised an eyebrow, then smiled slightly. "That's either very brave or very stressful." "I think it's both," he chuckled. "Fair enough." Angelina took the coffee, nodded, and walked out. Back in the car, she took a sip. It was terrible. Way too sweet. She stared at the cup. Why did I do that? Then, unexpectedly, she let out a small laugh. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even fully intentional. But it was there. 2 days later, she was still driving. Not constantly. She stopped at random places, slept in small motels, ate at diners where no one knew her name. But even with all the movement, her body still felt tense, like it was waiting for someone to call her back. The next morning, in a small roadside diner, she sat in a booth staring at a menu. A waitress came over, pen ready. "What can I get you, sweetheart?" Angelina looked up. "What do you recommend?" "Everything," the waitress said without hesitation. "That's not helpful," the waitress laughed. "All right, fair, pancakes are good." Angelina nodded. "I'll have that." "And coffee?" Angelina hesitated. "Yes, but not too sweet." The waitress smiled. "Got it. You'd be surprised how many people mess that up." Angelina almost said "I know," but stopped herself. "You don't need to explain everything." "Thank you," she said instead. While she waited, she looked around. People were talking, laughing, arguing lightly over small things. It all felt normal, unstructured. No one seemed to be in a rush to prove anything. Angelina leaned back slightly. Is this what people do? Just sit and talk? The thought felt almost ridiculous. Later that afternoon, she stopped at a small overlook. There was no sign, just a stretch of road and a view that opened up into rolling hills and fading light. She stepped out of the car and walked a few steps forward. The air felt different, cooler, cleaner. She stood there, arms loosely at her sides, watching the sun dip lower. She couldn't remember the last time she had stood still long enough to notice something like this. It wasn't a big moment. Nothing life-changing happened, but something inside her slowed. That evening, in a small motel room with slightly uneven floors and a flickering lamp, Angelina sat on the edge of the bed. The silence felt louder here. There were no hospital sounds, no voices, no constant movement. Just her. And there was nothing to distract her from her own thoughts. "Do you like your life?" Mrs. Thomas's voice came back clearly. Angelina let out a slow breath. "I don't even know what my life is," she said quietly, to no one. Her throat tightened. She pressed her lips together. Not now. But it didn't listen. The tears came suddenly, without warning. She bent forward slightly, her hands covering her face as the emotion hit harder than she expected. "This doesn't make sense. I had everything. I did everything right. So why does it feel like nothing?" Her shoulders shook as the thoughts came faster. What was I even working toward? Who was that for? Why didn't I stop sooner? She cried longer than she meant to. Not loudly, not in a way anyone would hear. Just quietly, like something that had been waiting for years finally found a way out. The following morning, she woke up with a dull heaviness behind her eyes. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then it came back. The motel, the road, the fact that she had left everything behind. She sat up slowly. Her first instinct was to reach for her phone, check messages, check updates, check something, but the phone was off. She stared at it for a moment, then leaned back against the headboard. I could go back. The thought came quickly, cleanly. She could call, apologize, say it was a mistake, return to her life. Everything would fall back into place. It would be easy, predictable, safe. Angelina sat with that thought for a long moment. Then she shook her head. "No," she said quietly. Not because she was certain, but because going back felt worse. A few hours later, she was back on the road. No destination, just movement. She drove through small towns, winding roads, places that didn't appear in her old life at all. At one point, she passed a sign, Idlewild. She slowed slightly. Why not? The thought was simple. No analysis, no planning, just why not? By late afternoon, she was driving up into the mountains. The road curved gently, lined with trees that felt taller, older, quieter. The air shifted again, cooler, quieter. She rolled down the window slightly and let it in. For a moment, she forgot to think. When she finally pulled into the small town, it didn't feel like anything she was used to. No rush, no noise. Just small shops, quiet streets, and people moving at a pace she didn't understand yet. She parked her car and turned off the engine. For a second, she just sat there. Then she opened the door and stepped out. The air hit her first. Fresh. Still. She took a deep breath without thinking. Then another. Her shoulders dropped slightly, like her body was adjusting before her mind could catch up. Angelina looked around. She didn't know this place. She didn't know what she was supposed to do here. She didn't have a plan, and for once that didn't feel like a problem. It just felt open. She closed the car door gently and stood there for a moment longer, breathing in the quiet. Something inside her shifted. Not completely, not all at once, but enough for her to notice, and this time she didn't try to analyze it. She just let it be. The first night in Idlewild, Angelina stayed in a small guest house above a closed shop. It wasn't planned. Nothing was. The owner, a woman named Caroline, handed her a key and said, "It's not fancy, but it's clean. You'll be fine." "I don't need fancy," Angelina replied. Caroline smiled. "That's what everyone says until the shower takes a minute to get hot." Angelina nodded like that was useful information. It probably was. The room had a small bed, a wooden chair, and a window that looked out into trees that felt too still to be real. Angelina set her bag down and stood there for a moment. No hospital, no schedule, no one expecting anything. It felt unfamiliar. The next morning, she woke up and immediately sat up. Okay, what's the plan? Her brain waited. Nothing came. No list. No urgency. No next step. She frowned slightly. This is inefficient. She got out of bed anyway and stood in the middle of the room, arms loosely at her sides. "What do people do?" she said out loud. The question hung there. No answer. 20 minutes later, she decided to make breakfast. That seemed like a normal thing. The small kitchen had eggs, bread, and a pan that looked slightly older than her. She cracked an egg into the pan. It spread too quickly. She frowned. That doesn't look right. She tried flipping it. It folded into something that looked, who know what. "Okay," she muttered. "We can fix this." She could not fix it. 5 minutes later, she stared at a plate of burnt edges and undercooked center. She poked it with a fork. This feels like a health risk. She took a bite anyway, immediately regretted it. "All right," she said, putting the fork down. "We're not doing that again." She ended up eating toast, plain toast, which felt like failure but also survival. Later that morning, she stepped outside and looked around the town. People moved slower here. No one looked rushed. A man walked past her carrying a bag of groceries and nodded. "Morning." Angelina blinked. "Morning." He kept walking. She stood there for a second. That was easy. No expectations, no follow-up questions. Just morning. The following week she tried hiking. Someone at a small shop had said, "You should check out the trails," so she did, or at least she tried. 10 minutes in, she was already questioning her decision. Why is this uphill? Her breathing picked up. Her legs felt unfamiliar. "I used to work 12-hour shifts," she muttered. "Why is this harder?" A couple passed her, moving easily. "Beautiful day," the woman said. "Yes," Angelina replied, slightly out of breath. The couple kept walking. Angelina stood there, hands on her hips. "I think I'm out of shape." That realization felt both obvious and slightly offensive. 2 days later, she tried again. This time she went slower. She noticed things. The sound of leaves moving, the way the air felt cooler under the trees. The quiet. Not empty, quiet. Just quiet. She stopped halfway up the trail and sat on a rock. No phone, no noise, just her. It felt strange, but not bad. The following morning, she walked into a small cafe. She hesitated at the counter. "What can I get you?" the barista asked. Angelina paused. "What do people usually order?" The barista smiled. "Coffee." "That makes sense." "What kind?" Angelina thought about the gas station disaster. "Not too sweet," she said carefully. The barista nodded. "I respect that." Angelina paid and stepped aside. When her drink was ready, the barista called out, "Angelina." She froze for a second. She hadn't said doctor. She hadn't said anything else. Just Angelina. It felt small, but different. A few days later, she met an older man sitting outside the cafe. He had a bandage wrapped around his hand. Angelina noticed it immediately. "That's not clean," she said before she could stop herself. The man looked at her. "Excuse me?" "Your bandage," she said, pointing slightly. "It should be changed." He squinted at her. "You a doctor or something?" Angelina hesitated. "Say it. That's who you are." But the words felt heavy. "I used to be," she said instead. The man raised an eyebrow. "Used to be?" "It's complicated," he chuckled. "All right, complicated. You want to fix it?" Angelina paused, then nodded. "Okay." Later that afternoon, she cleaned and rewrapped his hand at a small table outside. "You do this often?" he asked. "I used to." "You charge?" "No." He looked at her for a moment. "That's new." Angelina smiled slightly. "Yes, it is." The following week, word spread, not in a big way. Just small things. Someone with a cut, someone with a cough, someone asking, "Hey, can you take a look at this?" Angelina didn't advertise. She didn't plan it. It just happened. And for the first time, helping people didn't feel like pressure. It felt simple, one person at a time. No rush, no expectations, just care. One evening, back in her small room, she opened a notebook she had bought earlier that day. She stared at the blank page. "What do I write?" She tapped the pen lightly against the paper. Then slowly she began, "I don't know who I am without work." She stopped, read it again. It felt honest, so she kept going. "I don't know what I like. I don't know what I want. I only know what I was supposed to do." Her hand moved steadily now. "I think I've been living someone else's idea of a good life." She paused, staring at the words. Is that true? It felt true. That was enough. 2 weeks later, she found herself laughing. Not politely, not carefully, actually laughing. It happened outside the cafe when the same older man said, "You still haven't charged me, so I'm starting to think you're bad at business." "I'm excellent at business," Angelina replied. "I'm just not participating." He laughed. "Fair enough." Angelina laughed too. And this time she didn't think about it. She just felt it. Later that evening, as she walked back to her room, she caught herself smiling. Not because she had achieved something, not because someone had praised her, just because she felt okay. She paused for a moment, noticing it. This is new. The thought came gently. Not overwhelming, not confusing, just new. Angelina took a slow breath and kept walking, and the feeling stayed. A few days later, Angelina was sitting outside the cafe with her notebook open, pretending to write. She had written the same sentence 3 times. "I don't know what I'm doing." It felt accurate, but also repetitive. She tapped the pen against the page. What do people write after that? Before she could figure it out, a shadow fell across the table. "You've been staring at that page like it insulted you." Angelina looked up. The man standing there looked about her age, maybe a little older. Casual clothes, slightly messy hair, the kind of expression that suggested he noticed more than he said. "I'm thinking," she replied. "About whether the pen is working," he asked, glancing at the untouched page. "It is working." "Then it's definitely the thinking." Angelina blinked. Was that teasing? "I'm writing," she said, turning the notebook slightly away. "Right," he said, nodding. "Invisible ink. Very advanced." She stared at him for a second. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. Just a little. "I was writing," she corrected. "Now I'm being interrupted." "That sounds serious," he said. "Should I apologize or commit to it?" Angelina considered that. "I don't know yet." He pulled out the chair across from her. "I'll sit. We'll figure it out together." He didn't ask. He just sat. Angelina watched him for a second. This is new. Most people either avoided her or treated her carefully. He was doing neither. "I'm Oliver," he said, like it was obvious she should know. "Angelina." Nice to meet you, Angelina, who writes very slowly. I don't write slowly, she said. I think thoroughly. Same thing with better branding. She let out a small laugh before she could stop herself. That happened too easily. Later that same afternoon they were still talking. It hadn't been planned, it just continued. So what do you do? Oliver asked, leaning back in his chair. Angelina hesitated. Say it. That's what you always say. I used to be a doctor, she said instead. Used to be? He repeated. That sounds like a story. It is. You going to tell it? No. He nodded. Fair enough. No follow-up questions. No pressure. Angelina felt something in her chest loosen slightly. He didn't need an explanation. That felt strange. The next morning she found herself thinking about the conversation, not analyzing it, just remembering it. The way he spoke, the way he didn't fill silence unnecessarily, the way he made simple comments feel lighter. She frowned slightly. Why am I thinking about this? She shook her head and went back to her notebook. I met someone, she wrote, then stopped. That felt like too much. She crossed it out. A few days later she saw him again. Not planned. He was standing outside the same cafe talking to the barista. You're back, he said when he noticed her. Angelina paused. So are you. I live here, he replied. That makes sense. He smiled. You don't. She hesitated. I'm staying for a while. Running away or taking a break? Angelina blinked. That was direct. I don't know, she said honestly. He nodded like that answer made sense to him. Good. Good? Yeah. I don't know is better than most people's answers. Angelina frowned slightly. How? Because at least it's honest. She didn't respond, because part of her wanted to argue, and another part knew he was right. They ended up walking together that afternoon. No plan, just walking. So, Oliver said, hands in his pockets, what did you do before you used to be a doctor? I was a doctor. Right, but before that, I studied. For how long? Angelina thought about it. Most of my life. He glanced at her. That sounds exhausting. It was normal. For who? Angelina opened her mouth, closed it. I don't know, she admitted. Oliver nodded slowly. That's coming up a lot for you. What is? Not knowing. She frowned. I know things. I'm sure you do, he said, just not the things you're being asked right now. That landed. Angelina looked ahead, her steps slowing slightly. Why does that feel uncomfortable? Because it was true. They reached a small clearing and stopped. Oliver sat on a low rock, gesturing for her to do the same. She hesitated, then sat. You're very controlled, he said after a moment. Angelina stiffened slightly. What does that mean? It means you think before you feel. I don't think that's a bad thing. It's not, he said, until it is. Angelina crossed her arms slightly. I'm not sure what you're implying. I'm not implying anything, he said. I'm observing. She looked at him. He wasn't judging. He wasn't pushing. He was just noticing. That felt more unsettling than criticism. Later that evening, as they walked back toward town, Oliver said, You don't have to explain everything, you know. Angelina blinked. I don't? No, he said simply. You can just be here. She let out a small breath. I don't know how to do that. I figured, he said, smiling slightly. She gave him a look. That sounded like a joke. It was a gentle one. Angelina shook her head, but she was smiling again. This keeps happening. The following weeks they ran into each other more often, at the cafe, on the street, once near the trail where she had struggled to breathe. You look less like you're being attacked by the mountain, he said that day. I've improved, she replied. Proud of you. That felt sarcastic. It was supportive sarcasm. Angelina laughed. She didn't try to stop it this time. One afternoon, as they sat outside with coffee, Oliver said, You still haven't told me why you left? Angelina looked down at her cup. I don't fully understand it myself. That's fine. She glanced up. You're not curious? I am, he said. I just don't think curiosity gives me permission. Angelina stared at him. That was new. Most people asked because they felt entitled to an answer. He didn't. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For not pushing. He nodded. You'll talk when you're ready. Or you won't. Either way, you're still sitting here. Angelina let that settle. You're still sitting here. It sounded simple, but it felt important. Later that evening, back in her room, she sat on the edge of her bed. Her notebook rested beside her. She picked it up and flipped to a blank page. I think I want to see him again, she wrote. She paused. Read it. Didn't cross it out this time. Instead, she let out a small breath and leaned back. This feels different. Not overwhelming. Not confusing. Just something she wanted. Angelina stared at the ceiling for a moment, then smiled slightly to herself. And for once, she didn't question it. 3 weeks later, Angelina noticed it before she understood it. She wasn't counting time anymore. That afternoon, she and Oliver were sitting outside the cafe, doing nothing important. No plan, no purpose, just sitting. That's your third coffee, Oliver said, watching her take another sip. I'm observing patterns, she replied. In caffeine. In behavior, she said. Mine, specifically. He leaned back in his chair. And what have you discovered? That I drink more coffee when I don't have anything to do, he nodded. That sounds like progress. How is that progress? Because before you didn't have time to notice. Angelina paused. That was annoyingly accurate. She looked down at her cup. I used to measure my days in tasks. Now it's coffee. She wasn't sure if that was good or bad, but it felt lighter. The following week, they started spending more time together without planning it. It just happened. She would walk into the cafe and he'd already be there. Or she'd go for a walk and somehow they'd end up on the same path. You're starting to feel predictable, she said one afternoon. I live here, he replied. You're the one who keeps showing up. That sounds like blame. It's gentle observation. She smiled. That word again. Observation. It didn't feel invasive when he said it. It felt steady. 2 weeks later, they were walking through town when Oliver stopped suddenly. What? Angelina asked. You just said hello to 3 people without overthinking it. She blinked. I did? Yes, he said. No pause, no analysis, just normal people interaction. Angelina frowned slightly. I've always been able to talk to people. That's not the same as being at ease with them. She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped, because she knew the difference. A month later, the conversation shifted, not forced, just deeper. They were sitting outside her cabin that evening, the air cooler, the sky dimming slowly. I think I was easier to understand before, Angelina said. Oliver glanced at her. How? I had a clear identity, she said. Doctor, achiever, reliable. And now? She hesitated. Now I don't know what to call myself. He shrugged slightly. Why do you need to call it anything? Because that's how people understand you. Or maybe that's how you explain yourself to avoid being misunderstood. Angelina looked at him. That felt uncomfortably close to the truth. I don't think I was ever a person, she said quietly. I think I was a result. Oliver didn't react immediately. He just sat there, letting her words exist. Then he said, You're a person now. She let out a small breath. I don't feel like one yet. You're just not used to it. She nodded slowly. That made sense. 2 months later, she learned more about him. Not all at once, just pieces. They were walking one afternoon when she asked, What did you do before this? Oliver smiled slightly. That sounds like a serious question. It is. He kicked a small rock off the path. I used to work in a city. Office job, stable, predictable. And? And I left. Angelina raised an eyebrow. That sounds familiar. Yeah, he said, except I didn't have a good reason. You don't think wanting something different is a good reason? He shrugged. At the time, it felt like failure. And now? Now it feels like the only honest decision I made. Angelina nodded. That landed somewhere deep. Maybe leaving doesn't always mean breaking something. Maybe it means finally listening. 3 months later, it happened quietly. A woman in town had a bad fall near one of the trails. Angelina happened to be nearby. People were already gathered, unsure what to do. Angelina stepped forward before she could think about it. "Let me see," she said. Her hands moved naturally, checking, assessing, stabilizing. No hesitation, no pressure, just doing. The woman winced. "Is it bad?" "You'll be okay," Angelina said calmly. "But we need to get you checked properly." Her voice was steady, not forced, just present. Later that evening, she sat alone in her room. Her hands rested in her lap. She stared at them for a long moment. That felt different, not heavy, not overwhelming, just right. She leaned back slightly, thinking. I didn't hate this. The realization came slowly. I hated how I lived it. She closed her eyes. That thought stayed. 6 months later, life felt settled. Not perfect, just steady. She knew the town, the people, the rhythm of her days. She laughed without thinking about it. She spoke without rehearsing it. She sat in silence without needing to fill it. And with Oliver it felt easy, not effortless, just honest. 1 year later she started helping more often. Still informal, still simple. Someone with a fever, someone with a cut, someone needing advice. No titles, no expectations. And every time it felt the same. Light, meaningful, real. 2 years later, everything shifted again. Not in a loud way, just one moment. A man came into town, short of breath, clearly unwell. People looked around, unsure. Angelina stepped forward. "Sit down," she said gently. Her mind moved quickly. Her hands followed. Everything she had learned, everything she had been, came back. But this time, it didn't feel like pressure. It felt like purpose. Afterward, as the man was taken to get further care, Angelina stood there quietly. Oliver walked up beside her. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "I think I understand now." "Understand what?" She looked at him. "I never hated being a doctor," she said. "I hated who I was while doing it." Oliver didn't respond right away, he just nodded, like that made complete sense. That evening they sat outside her cabin again, the same place, different people. "You've changed," Oliver said. "I know. You're not running anymore." "I'm not," she said. She looked at him, her expression softer than it used to be. "I think I'm finally choosing." He smiled slightly. "Good." A few minutes later, he shifted in his seat. Angelina noticed immediately. "What is he doing?" "I don't have a speech," he said. "That's reassuring." He laughed quietly. "I just know that I want this. With you." Her chest tightened, not painfully, just full. "I don't want perfect," he continued. "I don't want planned. I just want real." Angelina felt her eyes sting slightly, but she didn't look away. "I've watched you figure yourself out," he said, "and I don't want to miss what comes next." He held out a small ring. Simple, honest. "Will you marry me?" Angelina didn't rush. For once, she didn't search for the right answer. She already had it. "Yes," she said softly. "I choose this." He smiled as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Angelina let out a small laugh, shaking her head. "I didn't expect my life to look like this." "That's probably a good sign," he said. She looked at him. Really looked at him. And this time it wasn't about filling a role. It wasn't about doing things right. It was about choosing. Him. Herself. This life. Later that night, lying in bed, she stared at her hand. The ring caught the light slightly. She thought about everything she had been, everything she had left, everything she had found. It didn't feel like loss anymore. It felt like distance. and that distance didn't hurt. It just reminded her how far she had come. The morning after the proposal, Angelina woke up and stared at the ceiling for a moment, her hand resting on her chest, her thumb brushing lightly over the ring. It still felt new, not overwhelming, just real. She sat up slowly, exhaling. This is happening. And for once the thought didn't make her anxious, it made her steady. The next evening, she met Oliver outside the cafe. He was already there, leaning against the railing, 2 coffees in hand. "You're late," he said. "I'm exactly on time," she replied, taking the cup from him. "You say that every time." "Because it's always true." He smiled. "We should probably talk about the wedding." Angelina paused mid-sip. "That sounds serious." "It is," he said, "mostly because I don't think either of us wants a big event." She let out a small breath of relief. "No, I don't." "Good," he said, "because I was thinking something simple, civil, just us." Angelina nodded slowly. Simple felt right. No expectations, no performance, just a choice. "When?" she asked. Oliver shrugged slightly. "Soon, before we overthink it," she smiled. "That sounds like us." 2 weeks later, they stood outside a small courthouse. No crowd, no decorations. Just a quiet morning and a clerk who looked like she had done this 1,000 times. "Are you both ready?" the clerk asked. Angelina glanced at Oliver. He nodded. "Yes," she said. The ceremony was brief. Simple words, simple promises. But when she said, "I do," something inside her settled in a way she didn't expect. Not excitement, not fear, just certainty. Later that afternoon, they sat on a bench outside, still in their formal clothes, both slightly underdressed for what had just happened. "So," Oliver said, looking at her, "you're my wife." Angelina let out a small laugh. "That sounds strange." "Good strange or concerning strange?" "Good," she said. "Just new." He nodded. "We're good at new." She looked at him, her expression softer than usual. "Yes," she said, "we are." The morning after the wedding, Angelina woke up in a different room. For a second, she didn't move. The ceiling wasn't hers. The light came in at a different angle. She turned her head slightly and saw Oliver standing by the window, pulling the curtain open. "Oh," she said softly. He looked back at her and smiled. "Good morning, wife." She let out a quiet laugh, sitting up slowly. "That still sounds strange." "You'll get used to it," he said. "You live here now." She looked around again. His place. Their place. That thought settled somewhere deep. Not overwhelming, just real. 2 days later, she was still adjusting. Her things were there now, not perfectly arranged, just present. A sweater on the chair, her notebook on the table, a pair of shoes near the door. It didn't look like her old life. It didn't look like his either. It looked like something in between. "You reorganized the kitchen," Oliver said that evening, opening a drawer and pausing. "I optimized it," she replied. "You moved everything." "I improved accessibility." He looked at her. "I can't find the spoons." "They're in a better place now." He stared at the drawer again. "This feels like a personal attack." Angelina laughed. "I'll show you," she said, walking over. The following week, marriage felt simple, not in a boring way, just steady. They cooked together, talked about small things, argued lightly about nothing important. "You're overcooking that," Oliver said one night. "I'm not overcooking it. I'm ensuring it's safe. It's pasta. It can still be undercooked." He shook his head. "You're impossible. And yet, you married me." "Questionable decision," he said. She smiled. "This feels easy." That thought came without effort. One afternoon, walking through town together, Angelina slowed down near the small empty space she had noticed before. She stopped. Oliver noticed immediately. "That place again?" She nodded slightly. "I can't stop thinking about it." He looked at it, then back at her. "You're thinking about opening something." She hesitated, then nodded again. "I don't want to go back to the hospital," she said. "But I keep thinking about helping people. Just differently. Oliver crossed his arms loosely, studying her. Not because you feel like you have to, he said. No, she replied, because I want to. He smiled slightly. Then what's stopping you? She exhaled. Fear, she admitted. What if I fall back into old habits? He stepped a little closer. Then I'll tell you, he said simply. She looked at him. You will? Yes, he said, and this time you'll listen. She let out a small breath. That felt safe. Okay, she said. I'll try. 2 weeks later, she signed the lease. It wasn't a big moment, no celebration, just a quiet decision, but it felt intentional. The next morning she stood inside the space, empty, unfinished, full of possibility. Oliver walked in behind her, carrying a small box. I brought tools, he said. She turned to him. You assume I need help. I've seen you try to assemble things, he replied. This is self-preservation. She smiled. Fair. The following weeks were busy, not overwhelming at first. She worked during the day, came home in the evening, told Oliver about small moments. There was a kid today who refused to sit still, she said one night. What did you do? I negotiated. With a child? Yes. Did you win? No, she admitted. But we reached an agreement. Oliver laughed. That sounds like progress. Angelina smiled. It felt good, balanced. The following week, things started to shift. Subtle, easy to ignore. I'll be late tonight, she said one afternoon. Okay, Oliver replied. I'll wait. She nodded and left quickly. Later that night, she walked in, exhausted. You ate? She asked. I waited, he said. I told you not to. You said you'd be a little late, she paused. I lost track of time. He nodded slowly. That's happening more. She felt it, but instead of sitting with it, she moved past it. I'm building something, she said. I know, he replied. The next morning, she left early, earlier than before Oliver woke up. If I stay ahead, everything stays under control. The thought came quickly, too familiar. The following week, the pattern grew stronger. Longer hours, less conversation, more distance. You're not here anymore, Oliver said one evening. I am here, she replied, setting her bag down. You're tired. You're distracted. You're somewhere else. I'm just busy. That's not an explanation, he said. She felt her chest tighten. Why does this feel like before? I can't let this fall apart, she said. I'm not asking you to, he replied. I'm asking you not to disappear into it. 2 days later, the argument came. You're doing it again, Oliver said. They stood in the middle of the living room. Doing what? She asked, even though she knew. You're turning everything into work. That's not true. It is, he said. You're filling every moment, so you don't have to feel anything. That's not fair. It's honest. Angelina looked away, because part of her knew he was right, and part of her didn't know how to stop. The following week, the distance inside their home became heavier. Same space, different silence. Until one evening, Oliver said quietly, I think I need some space. Angelina's chest tightened. You live here, she said. I know, he replied, which is why this is hard. She didn't speak, because this wasn't about leaving a place. It was about something deeper. I don't want to keep feeling like I'm not part of your life, he said. You are, she said quickly, but it doesn't feel like it. That night he packed a small bag. Not everything. Just enough. Angelina stood near the doorway, her arms folded tightly. Say something. Fix it. But the words didn't come. I'll come back, he said. I just need space to think. She nodded, even though it felt like something inside her was slipping. After he left, the house felt too quiet, not peaceful, empty. Angelina walked slowly into the living room and sat down. Everything was still there, his jacket, her notebook, the life they had started building. But the balance was gone. Later that night she sat at the table, her notebook open. Her hand hovered over the page. Then she wrote, I thought I could do both. She paused, then added, but I'm losing him the same way I lost myself before. Her chest tightened, because this time she understood exactly what was happening, and that made it harder. Angelina closed the notebook slowly and leaned back in her chair. The silence pressed in around her, and the thought that stayed was simple. What if I destroy the one thing that finally made me feel alive? The next morning, Angelina woke up to silence, not the quiet she had learned to enjoy. This one felt heavier. She sat up slowly, looking around the room. Oliver's side of the space was still there. His jacket hung on the chair. His mug sat near the sink. Nothing had changed, except everything had. She rubbed her face lightly. Okay, what now? Her mind didn't give her a plan. For once it didn't rush to fix anything, and that made her uncomfortable. Later that morning she opened the clinic. The routine was still there. Unlock the door, turn on the lights, check the schedule. Her body moved through it easily, but something felt off. A woman came in with a mild fever. Angelina smiled, listened, asked questions. She said all the right things. But halfway through, a thought slipped in quietly. You sound like before. She paused for a second, then continued. No, not like before, but close enough to notice. That evening, back at home, she sat at the table with her notebook. She flipped through the pages slowly. Old entries. I don't know who I am. I think I'm learning. I feel okay today. She stopped, then turned to a blank page. Her pen hovered. Then she wrote, I am doing it again. She stared at the sentence. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt accurate. I thought it would be different this time, she continued, but I still try to control everything when I'm scared. She leaned back, exhaling. Scared of what? She tapped the pen lightly, then wrote again. Scared of losing something. Scared of not being enough. Scared of everything falling apart. She stopped. That one stayed. 2 weeks later, things didn't magically improve, but they changed, slightly. The following morning, she arrived at the clinic and looked at the schedule. Full. Her chest tightened slightly. I can do this. That was her first instinct. Then another thought followed. Do you have to? She stood there for a moment, then picked up her pen and crossed out 2 appointments. Not cancelled, rescheduled. Her hand paused. This feels wrong. Then she shook her head. No, this feels new. Later that afternoon, the older man she had helped months ago walked in. You look tired, he said, sitting down. I am adjusting, she replied. That's not what that looks like. Angelina smiled slightly. You're very observant. I've had practice, and he said, What's going on? She hesitated. Normally she would deflect, keep it professional, but something in her shifted. I think I'm learning how not to ruin my own life, she said. He blinked. That sounds serious. It is. He nodded. Good. That means you're paying attention. The following week she started asking for help. Not easily, not naturally, but intentionally. Can you handle the front today? She asked Caroline one morning. Caroline raised an eyebrow. You asking for help? Yes. Say that again. I want to remember this moment. Angelina laughed. Please don't make it a big deal. It is a big deal, Caroline said, but I'll be normal about it. Thank you. That felt strange, but also lighter. A few days later, she sat outside the cafe alone. Her coffee sat untouched. She stared at her phone. Call him. The thought had been there for days, but her hand didn't move. What if he doesn't answer? What if he does? She exhaled slowly. This isn't about control. This is about honesty. She picked up the phone and called. Oliver answered on the 3rd ring. Hey, he said. His voice sounded the same. That made it harder. Hi, she replied. There was a small pause. I wasn't sure if you'd call, he said. I wasn't sure either, she admitted. He let out a quiet breath. How are you? She could lie, say she was fine, say she had everything under control. But she didn't. I'm not okay, she said, but I'm trying to understand why. There was a longer pause this time. Then he said, That sounds like a good place to start. Later that afternoon they met, not at home, not at the clinic, just a bench near the edge of town. Neutral, safe. Angelina sat down first, her hands clasped loosely. Oliver joined her a moment later. Neither of them spoke immediately. "I've been thinking," she said finally. He nodded. "Me too." She let out a small breath. "I didn't lose you," she said. "I started losing myself again." Oliver looked at her. "That's what it felt like," he said quietly. "I thought I could control everything," she continued. "If I worked harder, stayed ahead, did everything right, and nothing would fall apart." "And?" She shook her head slightly. "It doesn't work like that." "No," he said, "it doesn't." She looked down at her hands. "I didn't know how to balance it," she admitted. "So I went back to what I knew." "Which is control," he said. "Yes." There was a pause. Then Oliver asked, "What's different now?" Angelina thought about it. "I'm not pretending it's fine," she said, "and I'm not trying to fix it in one day." He nodded slowly. "That matters." They sat there for a while longer, talking, not arguing, not fixing, just understanding. "I missed you," Oliver said at one point. Angelina swallowed slightly. "I missed you too." A few days later, things didn't go back to normal. But they shifted slightly. They met again, talked again, no expectations, just showing up. That evening, as Angelina walked back home, she felt something unfamiliar. Not certainty, not resolution, but space, room to grow, room to try again. She paused at the door, her hand resting on the handle. "This time I'm not rushing." The thought felt steady, not forced, just real. Angelina stepped inside, closing the door behind her gently, and hope didn't feel distant. It felt possible. The next morning, Angelina woke up before her alarm. Not because she was anxious, not because she had a long list waiting. She just woke up. She lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, then turned her head slightly. Her phone sat on the table beside her. No urge to grab it, no need to check anything. That felt new. She smiled a little and sat up. "Okay, let's try this again." 2 weeks later, things had settled into something slower. Not perfect, just steady. She still saw Oliver, but not every day. And when they did meet, it felt intentional. That afternoon, they sat outside the cafe again, the same place where so many of their conversations had started. "You look different," Oliver said, studying her. "That sounds," she replied. "I mean it in a good way," he said. "Less tense." "I am less tense," she admitted. "I stopped trying to control every outcome." He raised an eyebrow. "Completely?" She paused. "Okay, not completely," she said. "But I'm aware when I do it now." "That's progress." She nodded. It felt like it. The following week, she made a small change at the clinic. Nothing big, just boundaries. "I'm closing at 4 today," she told Caroline. Caroline blinked. "You're what?" "Closing. At 4. Are you sick?" "No." Caroline leaned closer. "Blink twice if someone is forcing you." Angelina laughed. "No one is forcing me. I just don't need to be here all evening." Caroline shook her head slowly. "I never thought I'd see the day." "Please be normal about this." "I am being normal. This is me being supportive." Later that afternoon, as she locked up earlier than usual, Angelina felt something strange. Guilt, but underneath it, relief. She walked slowly through town, noticing things she used to miss. The sound of someone laughing nearby. A dog barking at nothing. The way the light shifted as the sun started to set. I used to be too busy for this. The thought didn't hurt anymore. It just felt like a fact. A few days later, she called her parents. She hadn't planned it. It just felt like time. Her mother answered. "Angelina?" Her voice carried surprise. "Are you okay?" "I'm okay," Angelina said. "I just wanted to talk." There was a pause. Then, "Is everything all right with work?" Angelina smiled slightly. Same question, same starting point. "I'm working," she said. "But that's not why I called." Another pause. "Oh," her mother said. "Then why?" Angelina took a small breath. I wanted to tell you that I'm doing things differently now. What do you mean? I'm not trying to be perfect anymore. Silence. Then her mother said, You were always doing so well. I know, Angelina replied, but I wasn't living well. That landed. She could feel it. Later that evening, she sat outside her place, her phone resting beside her. That conversation stayed with her. They didn't fully understand, and maybe they wouldn't. But this time she wasn't trying to explain herself into being accepted. She was just being honest. 2 weeks later, the clinic felt different. Not bigger, not busier, just warmer. People stayed longer, talked more, laughed more. It didn't feel like a system. It felt like a place. You've changed this place, Caroline said one afternoon. Angelina shook her head. No, I just stopped treating it like a machine. Caroline nodded. Yeah, that. A few days later, Oliver stopped by near closing time. Are you done for the day? He asked. In 10 minutes, she replied. I'm finishing up. He leaned against the doorframe. I like this version of you, he said. Angelina looked up at him. What version is that? The one who leaves work on time, she smiled. I'm still working on that. I can tell. There was a quiet moment. Then he added, I'm still working on trusting that it'll stay this way. Angelina nodded slowly. That's fair. The following week they took a walk just outside town. Not planned, just something they decided in the moment. You know, Oliver said, kicking a small rock along the path, we're doing this very differently now. How so? We're not rushing to fix everything. Angelina smiled slightly. That's because I finally accepted that I can't. He glanced at her. And how does that feel? Uncomfortable, she said honestly, but also better. Later that evening they sat quietly, watching the sky shift into night. No pressure to talk, no need to fill the silence. Angelina leaned back slightly, her hands resting loosely in her lap. I used to think success meant never falling behind, she said. Oliver looked at her. And now? She thought for a moment. Now I think it means knowing when to stop, he smiled. That sounds healthier. I think it is. A few years later, life didn't look the way she had once imagined. It looked better. The clinic was steady, not overwhelming. She had help, she had boundaries, she had space. Her relationship with Oliver had grown into something stronger, not because it was perfect, but because it was honest. They argued sometimes, they laughed often. They chose each other again and again without pressure. Later that evening, sitting outside their home, Angelina rested her head lightly against Oliver's shoulder. The air was calm, the kind of quiet that didn't feel empty. I was thinking about my old life, she said. Good or bad? He asked. Both, she replied. He nodded. That sounds accurate. She smiled slightly. It doesn't hurt the same way anymore, she said. It just feels like something I understand now. Oliver didn't interrupt. He just listened. I thought I had everything figured out back then, she continued, but I didn't even know who I was. And now? Angelina looked out ahead, her expression calm. Now I don't need to have everything figured out. He smiled. That sounds like progress. She let out a small breath, leaning into him slightly. It feels like living. They sat there a while longer, not saying much. No pressure, no expectations, just being. And that was enough. Angelina closed her eyes for a moment, letting the quiet settle around her. She thought about everything she had been, everything she had lost, everything she had found. It didn't feel like a story she survived. It felt like a life she finally chose. And this time, she wasn't just existing inside it. She was living.